It began like any other ordinary day on Earth. People went to work, children attended schools, and the skies above the cities were calm and blue. No one had any reason to expect that life would change forever within a few short hours. But far beyond the clouds, in the silence of space, something was moving. Something no one could have imagined. The early warning stations that circled Earth picked up strange readings first. At first, scientists thought it was a glitch. They had seen solar storms before, meteor showers, and even unregistered debris from old satellites. But this was different. The signals were too structured, too deliberate. When the sensors adjusted, they saw it clearly. Hundreds of unknown objects all heading straight toward Earth's orbit. The command centers tried to make contact. Messages were sent in every known language, in radio frequencies, in light signals. But there was no reply. The objects kept coming. Within hours, telescopes across the planet confirmed the terrifying truth. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a fleet. At first, disbelief filled the control rooms. People laughed nervously, refusing to accept that aliens could be real, but the laughter faded when the first flashes appeared in orbit. The unknown ships opened fire without a word of warning. Satellite networks collapsed. Communication links went dark. The skies above Earth lit up like a second sunrise as orbital stations were destroyed one after another. In the first few minutes, millions watched helplessly as news channels struggled to stay on air. Broadcasts flickered and disappeared. The world was connected through fear now. Cities on every continent saw glowing streaks crossing the night sky, remnants of burning satellites falling back through the atmosphere. The assault was brutal and fast. Human defense systems were never built for such an enemy. The few space fleets that existed were small, designed for exploration, not for war. The alien ships moved with purpose, striking power plants, space elevators, and orbital habitats. No one understood why they attacked. There had been no warning, no message, no attempt to speak. Panic swept across the planet. People tried to flee major cities, fearing the worst. Governments ordered full emergency alerts. The United Nations held its last broadcast before the signal went dead. Around the world, ordinary people clung to hope, waiting for some kind of miracle. But amid the destruction, something else began to happen. Something deeply human. Rescue teams refused to stand down. Firefighters, medics, engineers, and soldiers worked together without sleep. People opened their homes to strangers, shared food, and comforted one another. Even as orbital fragments rained down, humanity didn't break. They held on. In a small control room deep beneath a mountain, Earth's remaining leaders gathered through emergency video channels. The discussion was heavy, and the faces on the screens showed fear and disbelief. They realized this was not a misunderstanding or a random act of aggression. Whoever had attacked Earth had done so deliberately, with the goal of destroying humanity's future. The first wave ended as quickly as it began. The alien fleet withdrew to high orbit, leaving devastation behind. The planet's skies were filled with falling debris, glowing trails cutting across the horizon. Every major nation reported casualties and loss of communication with their colonies in orbit. It was as if the entire human world had been thrown back a century in one single day. But in that silence after the attack, the human spirit began to rise. Radio operators started rebuilding small relay networks using whatever equipment survived. Engineers worked with solar power where electricity was gone. Within days, scattered messages began to flow again between nations. Humanity, bloodied but unbroken, began to take its first breath after the shock. In homes, bunkers, and shelters, people told each other the same thing. Earth must survive. They didn't yet know who had attacked them, but they knew one truth: they would not surrender their world. In the weeks that followed, stories of courage spread everywhere. A group of astronauts stranded on an orbital platform used debris to repair their station and guide it safely down through the atmosphere. An engineer in a coastal city redirected a damaged reactor's power to keep hospitals running. Across continents, soldiers and civilians stood side by side, defending what remained. The sky remained strange and silent. Occasionally, telescopes picked up movements above the atmosphere, shadows of alien craft watching, observing, almost as if testing Earth's response. Humanity knew another strike could come at any moment. But instead of fear, something different grew: anger, unity, and determination. On the ground, research centers reopened under military protection. Scientists started to study the fragments of alien machines that had crashed to Earth. The materials were unlike anything seen before, built with strange metals that bent light in impossible ways. Even damaged beyond repair, these fragments told one clear story. The attackers were far more advanced, but not invincible. As days turned into weeks, Earth's leaders met again through secure underground channels. This time their tone was different. There was still sorrow, but now there was focus. They discussed rebuilding communications, restoring order, and preparing for the possibility of war. The question that echoed through every meeting was simple: what if they come back? And then one message changed everything. A deep space observatory, half destroyed but still operational, picked up new movement at the edge of the solar system. The same type of signals, the same formation. The aliens were returning. But this time something inside humanity had changed. There was no more disbelief, no more denial. People didn't panic. Instead, factories restarted. Aircraft hangars were converted into shipyards. Every scientist, engineer, and pilot was called to serve. The world, once divided by politics and borders, began to speak with one voice. In a speech broadcast through emergency networks, a human commander said the words that defined a generation. "We did not ask for this fight," they said, "but if they return, they will learn who we are. Earth does not kneel." The speech spread faster than any official broadcast before it. It gave people strength. Even as smoke still rose from destroyed cities, humans began to rebuild with fierce determination. Young people volunteered to work in rebuilding programs. Old factories reopened to produce drones, engines, and armor plating. Nations that had been rivals for centuries sent aid to one another. Somewhere out in space, the alien fleet may have believed that humanity was broken, that one strike would end the story of Earth. But the truth was the opposite. The attack had awakened something ancient and powerful, the instinct to survive and protect one's home. The first strike would be remembered as the darkest moment in human history. But in that darkness, something extraordinary began to grow, a sense of unity, of shared destiny. The people of Earth had seen the stars filled with enemies, yet instead of despair, they found purpose. When night fell over the planet, cities glowed dimly through the smoke, and in every shelter and camp, people looked up at the sky. The same thought echoed in every heart. They struck first. They thought we would fall, but they have no idea who we are. No one knew what the future would bring, but every man, woman, and child understood this much. If those ships ever returned, humanity would be ready. And this time, the invaders would learn what it meant to challenge the children of Earth. After the first attack, the world felt silent for a long time. The skies had cleared, but the air still carried the smell of smoke and burnt metal. Across continents, people stood among ruins trying to understand what had happened. No one could believe that Earth, their home, their safe planet, had been struck by beings from the stars. The first days after the assault were filled with fear and confusion. Governments tried to reach each other through damaged communication lines. Some countries had lost entire cities. Others were without power or water. The old systems of control were breaking, but something new was beginning to form quietly among the people. It started small. Groups of survivors worked together to rebuild shelters. Scientists repaired broken satellites using scraps of metal. Ordinary people shared food, fixed generators, and cleared the streets. The more they worked together, the more they realized that survival wasn't about nations anymore. It was about humanity as one. When the first working radio station came back online, it didn't broadcast music or politics. It played a single message in every language it could translate. We are still here. Earth still stands. The message spread from one station to another, across borders, across oceans, until even the most distant settlements heard it. And for the first time since the attack, hope returned. Leaders and scientists began to meet through newly restored secure channels. They didn't argue as they once had. The world's old rivalries suddenly felt meaningless. The attack had shown them that in the eyes of the universe, humanity was one small family. If they didn't stand together, they would vanish together. A decision was made to form a single organization, one that represented every nation, every culture, every person. They called it the United Earth Command. It wasn't about politics or territory. It was about survival and unity. Every country agreed to contribute something: technology, knowledge, manpower, or materials. Factories reopened under a single banner. Scientists from different parts of the world shared data freely. Engineers worked side by side, speaking different languages but sharing the same purpose. In every city, people volunteered to rebuild. The young and old came together, driven by the same question: how do we protect Earth if they come again? Engineers repaired orbital launch systems, while research centers began to study the alien fragments that had fallen from the sky. The materials were strange and complex, yet they also gave humanity clues that would help them understand how to fight back. Everywhere there was a new energy in the air. The planet that had once been divided by borders now moved as one living body. Shipyards built new types of crafts. Weapons research, once banned by peace treaties, was restarted with a new goal: not conquest but defense. Humanity had learned its lesson. Peace is only safe when you have the strength to protect it. The first prototypes of new defense ships were born out of this cooperation. They were rough, unpolished, but they represented something powerful: Earth's determination. Scientists tested engines made from a mix of human design and alien fragments. When one of the first ships managed to lift off from a rebuilt launch base, people around the world cheered. It wasn't just a test flight. It was proof that Earth would rise again. In the months that followed, life slowly returned to rhythm, but it was not the same world anymore. People looked at the stars differently now. The night sky no longer felt distant or peaceful. Somewhere up there were beings who had tried to erase them. That thought alone was enough to keep everyone working. Schools reopened and teachers began telling students about what had happened, not to scare them, but to remind them why unity mattered. Children learned about science, technology, and space defense as if it were part of their duty to Earth. They grew up with a new kind of pride, not in their countries, but in their species. In every corner of the world, creativity bloomed again. Musicians wrote songs about courage. Artists painted images of Earth rising from ashes. People planted trees where cities had burned, promising to rebuild not only what was lost, but something stronger. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its machines, it was its spirit, its ability to rise after every fall. Meanwhile, deep in the new command centers, scientists worked tirelessly to develop better defense systems. They studied how the alien ships had moved, how their energy weapons worked, and how human ships could counter them. It was an enormous challenge, but every small success gave them more confidence. Many of the engineers worked without sleep. They shared simple meals in noisy workshops, surrounded by half-built machines. But no one complained. Each piece of metal, each wire, each circuit was a small promise that next time Earth would be ready. On the political side, something equally remarkable happened. Old disputes that had lasted for generations were simply dropped. Borders mattered less now. Aid flowed freely between nations. People no longer introduced themselves by where they were from, but by what they could do to help. And for the first time in human history, all space research centers joined under a single goal: to build a unified defense system around Earth. Huge orbital rings were planned, with laser networks and shield platforms that could detect and respond to any approaching threat. The construction would take years, but humanity was determined. As the world changed, the spirit of unity reached even those who had lost everything. In camps for displaced families, people built schools out of scrap metal. Children played with handmade toys shaped like rockets and ships, dreaming of one day flying among the stars themselves. Those children would grow up not fearing the universe, but determined to explore it safely. One evening, in the middle of a reconstruction zone, a quiet speech was broadcast from the main command headquarters. The speaker's voice was calm and steady. "We have seen what happens when we are divided," they said. "Now the universe will see what happens when humanity stands as one." The speech was shared everywhere, on screens, radios, and even printed on posters. It became a symbol of this new era. The unity that followed wasn't perfect. There were disagreements, shortages, and moments of exhaustion. But unlike before, no one gave up. Each time something broke, people repaired it. Each time someone fell, others helped them up. The world had changed, and for once it was changing for the better. As time passed, the shipyards grew busier. The first defensive fleet began to take shape. Massive ships built from materials no human hand had ever worked with before. Pilots trained in simulators, learning to handle new controls, new flight systems, and new weapons. Scientists joked that humanity was learning to walk again, but this time among the stars. The invaders had hoped that their attack would break humanity. Instead, it had united them in ways no one had ever thought possible. Every scar, every loss had turned into strength. The people of Earth had stopped waiting for help from anyone else. They had realized that their survival depended on one thing alone: their ability to stand together. As the first of the new defense ships launched into orbit, the world watched with quiet pride. Children pointed to the sky, parents smiled, and the elderly wept softly. It was not just a victory for science, it was proof that humanity's will could not be destroyed. That night, as the stars shimmered over the recovering world, the message repeated once again across every channel. We are still here. We are one. Earth stands united. The sound of those words reached every home, every heart. It didn't erase the pain or the loss, but it gave people something far stronger, a reason to keep going. The awakening of unity had begun, and it was unstoppable. From that moment on, humanity wasn't just rebuilding, they were preparing. And though they didn't know when the enemy would return, they were certain of one thing. The next time anyone tried to harm Earth, the planet would not face it divided or afraid. It would face it as one world, one people, one unbreakable voice echoing into the stars. Never again. Months had passed since the first attack. The scars of that day were still visible everywhere, on the land, in the sky, and in the hearts of the people. But beneath those scars, something powerful was growing. Humanity had changed. The fear that once filled their hearts had turned into determination. The new Earth was no longer a world of divided nations. It had become one working body, one mind, one purpose. The United Earth Command had grown stronger every week. Scientists who once competed now worked side by side. Engineers shared discoveries openly. Military forces from every continent trained together as if they had always been one. Everywhere, shipyards burned with light through the nights. The air hummed with the sound of machines welding, forging, and building. The first generation of Earth's defense fleet was finally taking shape. The ships were larger than anything humans had ever built before, made from a mix of human design and alien metal recovered from crash sites. They called them Guardians of Earth. The first time one of those ships rose into orbit, the whole world stopped to watch. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a symbol. It represented the will of a species that refused to vanish. As it disappeared into the clouds, people across the world looked up and whispered the same thing: "We're ready." Training programs began on every continent. Pilots practiced in simulators that mimicked the motion of spaceflight. Soldiers learned to control new kinds of systems that combined human technology with alien energy. Even civilians joined programs to learn basic defense skills and emergency response. The line between soldier and citizen had blurred. Everyone had a role to play. Despite the long hours and constant pressure, there was a sense of pride and unity. People no longer worked for money or fame. They worked for survival, for each other, and for the generations that would come after them. Deep in the main command center, teams monitored the outer edges of the solar system day and night. The memory of that first invasion never left them. They knew it was only a matter of time before the attackers returned. And when they did, Earth would not be caught unprepared. One cold morning, a radar station picked up something unusual. The signal was faint but familiar, patterns matching the energy trails from the alien fleet. When the confirmation came, the message spread across every command center. Unidentified objects approaching from deep space. The aliens were coming back. The world did not panic this time. There were no screams, no chaos. Instead, calm voices echoed through communication lines. Every shipyard increased its pace. Every pilot prepared. The fleets were activated under one order: the defense of Earth. When the alien ships entered the system, they found something they did not expect. Earth's orbit was no longer empty. Floating there were human warships, massive carriers, and fast interceptors waiting in silence. Their hulls carried the flag of one planet. The first encounter happened near Neptune's orbit. The aliens, confident from their earlier victory, advanced without hesitation. But this time, they were met by the new Terran defense fleet. The human ships didn't rush into battle blindly. They waited, watched, learned. Every movement was planned, every action precise. When the command to engage was finally given, it felt as if the whole planet held its breath. Engines roared, lights cut through the dark, and the first human counterstrike began. The battle was unlike anything humanity had ever fought before. There was no sound in the vacuum of space, only flashes of light and silent bursts of energy. The alien ships fired first, but the new human defenses held strong. Energy shields absorbed the impact. For every shot fired, the humans adapted, learning from each attack. It was not just a battle of technology, it was a battle of minds. The aliens had advanced weapons, but humans had something they didn't: creativity, unpredictability, and the will to survive. Human pilots began using strange, risky maneuvers, changing direction faster than the enemy could predict. Every small victory inspired the rest. In the command center, eyes watched the screens in silence. Data streamed in as alien formations broke apart. One by one, the enemy ships began to fall back. For the first time in history, humans had turned an invasion into a retreat. The message sent across all frequencies was short and powerful: Earth stands. When the battle ended, cheers erupted across every base and station. People hugged, cried, and looked at the stars with pride. It wasn't just about winning, it was about proving that humanity could fight back. They had defended their home and protected everything that mattered. The alien fleet that had once brought destruction was now scattered. Some of their ships were captured intact, floating silently in space. Recovery teams moved quickly to collect them for study. Every piece of alien technology was a new step toward understanding and preparing for what might come next. But while the people celebrated, the leaders of Earth remained thoughtful. They knew this was only the beginning. The aliens had tested them once, failed, and now would surely return stronger. The question was not if they would come back, but when. In the following months, humanity did not rest. The shipyards expanded, research centers multiplied, and new strategies were written. The scientists who studied the captured alien vessels discovered something shocking. The invaders had not sent their full force during either attack. The fleets that had struck Earth were only advance units. That realization sent a chill through the command. If that was true, the real war was still ahead. But instead of fear, it sparked something else, a deeper determination. Earth would not just wait for the next assault. They would prepare to take the fight beyond their skies. The idea of a counteroffensive was born quietly at first. It began as a simple thought shared between commanders and scientists. If we can defend Earth, why can't we stop them before they ever reach us? Over time, that idea turned into a plan. The project was given a simple name: Operation Retribution. The goal was clear: build a fleet strong enough to travel to the enemy's territory and make sure they could never threaten Earth again. It wasn't about revenge. It was about security, survival, and peace. As the plan spread through command centers, people across the world supported it. Volunteers poured into training programs. Scientists accelerated their research, designing faster engines and stronger armor. Humanity's progress was faster than ever before. What would have taken decades was achieved in months. From the ashes of loss, a new kind of hope had risen. People began to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity could do more than defend. It could lead. It could stand among the stars as an equal, not as a victim. As the new fleet took shape, it was unlike anything ever built before. The ships were sleek, powerful, and filled with the combined knowledge of an entire planet. Every system was tested, improved, and tested again. Crews trained day and night, pushing themselves to perfection. They knew the stakes. Failure meant extinction. When the final ship was completed, it stood in orbit above Earth, shining like a small sun. It was the largest human-made object ever to leave the planet, and it carried a single message engraved deep within its core: for Earth, for humanity, for peace. The people of Earth watched as the fleet prepared for its first mission. There was no fear this time, only quiet confidence. They had faced destruction once and survived. Now they would take control of their own destiny. The day before the launch, a single transmission was sent to every citizen on Earth. The message was simple: they attacked us once. They thought we would fall. They were wrong. Tomorrow, humanity takes its first step toward the stars, not as victims, but as protectors. That night, as cities glowed softly across the planet, people stood outside, looking up. Some whispered prayers, others smiled through tears. The sky that had once brought fear now filled them with pride. The counterstrike had begun, not just a military mission, but the rebirth of humanity's spirit. For the first time, the universe would see what it meant to challenge the people of Earth. And as the fleet engines roared to life, the stars themselves seemed to tremble, as if even the cosmos knew. A new force had awakened, and it carried the unbreakable heart of humankind. The day the fleet left Earth was unlike any other in human history. The sky was filled with light from hundreds of engines glowing like stars in motion. People all over the planet stopped whatever they were doing just to watch. On mountaintops, in cities, in quiet villages, everyone looked up as the fleet rose slowly beyond the clouds. It was not an army of conquest. It was an army of protection, born from loss, driven by unity, and guided by one single purpose: to make sure Earth would never be attacked again. The ships moved together in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in sunlight. Each one carried not only weapons and supplies, but also the hopes of an entire species. Inside, the crews were calm. Some sat quietly, staring at old pictures of their families. Others whispered to themselves, remembering what was lost. But under all that emotion was one shared feeling, a quiet strength that came from knowing they were fighting for something far greater than themselves. For months, they had trained for this journey. Now it was real. The mission had a simple goal: reach the home system of the invaders, confront them, and make sure they could never threaten humanity again. The plan was called Operation Retribution. It was not about revenge. It was about ending the cycle of fear once and for all. The journey through deep space was long and silent. The darkness between stars was endless, filled with cold beauty. The fleet passed through regions no human had ever seen before. They moved carefully, scanning everything around them. Every signal, every shadow was studied, because out here, one mistake could mean disaster. Inside the ships, people learned the rhythm of space travel. Days blended into nights. The crews worked in shifts, checking systems, repairing equipment, and running endless drills. Sometimes they gathered in small groups, talking about home, about how Earth must look from far away. Even in the vast emptiness, the thought of their planet gave them warmth. As weeks turned into months, tension grew. The fleet's sensors began picking up faint traces of energy ahead, signs of alien technology. Humanity was close. The crews prepared themselves, running final checks. Every system was ready. Every heart was steady. When the alien ships finally appeared, it was both breathtaking and frightening. They were enormous, built from strange, dark materials that shimmered with light. They moved in perfect silence, their shapes unfamiliar and unsettling. The human fleet held position, scanning carefully. There was still a small hope. Maybe after seeing humanity's power, the aliens would choose peace. A message was sent across the void, in all known languages, in mathematical patterns, even in simple visual code. The translation was clear: we do not seek war. We only ask for peace. For a moment, there was no reply. The radio channels stayed quiet. Then, without warning, the alien ships shifted formation and powered up their weapons. The silence ended. The first flashes of light appeared, distant but sharp, like tiny stars exploding in the dark. The human fleet responded instantly. Shields went up, engines flared, the formation tightened, and every ship locked onto its target. What followed was a long and difficult battle, not of hate, but of survival. The alien forces were fast and precise, but the humans had learned from their mistakes. They fought not with arrogance, but with understanding. Every move was calculated. Every loss was answered with new tactics. Human pilots used everything they had: courage, instinct, and creativity. They pushed their machines beyond limits, using maneuvers that no computer could predict. Hours felt like days. The space around them became a field of glowing debris and fading light. But slowly, steadily, the human fleet began to push forward. The enemy was strong, but they were not ready for an opponent that refused to give up. When the alien formation finally broke apart, the fleet did not celebrate. There was no cheering, no shouting. Only a deep, quiet silence filled the ships. They had survived. But everyone knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The coordinates they had captured from alien transmissions led them deeper into enemy space. What they saw next stunned them. The alien home system was vast, filled with structures that floated between planets. Massive shipyards, glowing stations, and towering constructs that looked like cities made of light. It was more beautiful than anyone expected, but it also carried a heavy truth. The civilization that had attacked Earth was old, powerful, and deeply afraid. The command decided to move carefully. They didn't want to destroy for the sake of destruction. The fleet targeted only the systems used for war: the shipyards, the weapon factories, and the command outposts. Every strike was clean, measured and precise. The goal was simple: disarm, not annihilate. As the attacks continued, the aliens began to pull back. Some of their ships tried to escape. Others sent signals of surrender. Humanity had proven that they were not a weak species hiding on a small blue planet. They were something far stronger, resilient, intelligent, and united. Throughout the operation, the human crews often paused to send messages back home. They described what they saw: the strange landscapes, the distant suns, the alien worlds that had once threatened them. Each message ended the same way: for Earth, we move forward. It wasn't just a war anymore. It had become a statement to the universe. Humanity was no longer a species limited to its homeworld. They were explorers, defenders, and survivors of the stars. After weeks of operations, the alien leadership finally sent a signal across all frequencies. It was not a demand. It was a plea. They wanted to talk. For the first time, there was a chance for peace. The human fleet accepted the message and waited. A small group of alien vessels approached slowly, unarmed. The transmission that followed was short and simple. In their own strange language, the aliens admitted defeat. They asked for terms, and they promised to end their attacks forever. The leaders of the Earth fleet listened carefully. There was no anger in their response, only firm resolve. The message they sent back was clear: we do not seek revenge. But you will never harm our world again. With that, the war was over. The fleet remained in orbit around the alien home system for a short time to ensure peace was real. Supplies were shared. Medical help was even offered to wounded alien crews. The mission had ended not in hatred but in understanding. Humanity had defended itself and shown mercy. When the fleet finally turned back toward home, the journey felt different. The darkness of space no longer seemed empty. It felt alive, full of possibility. The people on board knew they had changed history. Back on Earth, when the fleet's return signal was detected, the planet erupted in celebration. People filled the streets, waving flags of Earth, not of nations. The sound of joy echoed from one continent to another. For the first time in history, every human heart beat with pride and relief. As the ships re-entered orbit, Earth looked more beautiful than ever, a glowing blue jewel against the black of space. Many of the crew members cried when they saw it again. They had left as defenders and they were returning as heroes. But none of them thought of themselves that way. They thought only of home, of peace, of the simple joy of seeing their planet safe again. The command centers opened a final communication to the fleet. The voice that spoke was calm and full of emotion. "You have done what no one in history ever imagined possible," it said. "You have protected our world and brought hope to every human alive. This is not the end of our story. This is the beginning of our future." As the fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere, the night sky glowed brighter than ever. It was not fire, it was light, the kind that symbolized peace. People looked up and whispered softly, knowing they had witnessed something greater than victory. Humanity had faced the unknown, stood against the darkness, and come back stronger. They had marched beyond their own solar system and returned not as conquerors, but as guardians. And as the first dawn rose over Earth that morning, it felt like the whole world was breathing again, free, united, and awake. When the fleet finally returned to Earth, it felt like the whole planet stopped breathing for a moment. The sky was filled with streaks of light as the massive ships entered the atmosphere one by one. Oceans reflected their glow, mountains shimmered under their engines, and people gathered everywhere to watch the heroes come home. For months, the world had waited for news, praying, hoping, fearing. And now the message was clear. Humanity had survived. The invaders had been stopped. The war that had once seemed impossible was finally over. Every street, every home, every city echoed with the sound of joy. People hugged strangers, cried, and cheered until their voices went hoarse. It wasn't just a celebration of victory, it was a celebration of life itself. For the first time in history, the people of Earth didn't think of themselves as divided by nations. They saw themselves as one family, one species that had faced the impossible and returned stronger. When the ships landed, their crews stepped out quietly. They weren't seeking fame or reward. Most were just tired, grateful to breathe Earth's air again, to feel real sunlight on their faces. Some fell to their knees and kissed the ground. Others stood silently, looking up at the sky they had defended. They had seen the edge of death and the cold beauty of space, and they knew how fragile everything truly was. Reporters, cameras, and crowds surrounded them. But what mattered most wasn't the noise or the celebration. It was the silence between them, the understanding that they had fought not for glory, but for every child, every family, every future yet to come. The Global Council announced that the day of their return would forever be remembered as Unity Day, not as a symbol of war, but as a reminder of what humanity could achieve when it stood together. Schools, homes, and communities everywhere began to honor the fallen, the ones who didn't make it back. Their names were spoken with respect, and their memories became the foundation of a new world. In the months that followed, Earth began to change. Old rivalries faded, borders became less important. People realized how meaningless small conflicts were compared to what they had faced among the stars. Humanity had learned something profound, that they were capable of greatness but only when they acted as one. Technology from the fleet was shared across the world. Energy systems became cleaner. Medicine advanced rapidly. The experience gained from space travel helped rebuild the planet faster than anyone imagined. Humanity didn't just recover, it evolved. But there was something deeper that changed too. People started to look at the night sky differently. The stars no longer represented fear. They represented possibility. Every light out there was now a mystery to explore, a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The same engineers who had built warships began designing peaceful exploration vessels. They called them Guardians of Light. Their mission was not to conquer but to connect, to travel to new worlds, meet new civilizations, and ensure that no future species would ever experience what Earth did. Humanity had learned the cost of war, and they swore never to start one again. Inside the new Space Academy, young cadets studied not only how to fly or fight, but how to understand. They learned about diplomacy, communication, and empathy. Their teachers were veterans who had seen both destruction and peace, and they spoke often about the importance of compassion. One of them, standing before a class one morning, said something that would stay with humanity forever. Strength, he said, is not measured by how hard we strike. It is measured by how long we protect what we love. The word spread quickly, becoming a quote repeated in schools, cities, and even carved into monuments. The largest monument of all stood in the center of Earth's rebuilt capital, a tall silver spire that reached toward the sky. At its base was a simple plaque that read, "We remember, we endure, we rise." Beneath those words, thousands of names were etched in shining lines, the names of those who gave their lives so that others could live. Every year, on Unity Day, people from every part of the world came together under that monument. They brought flowers, lights, and stories. Children asked their parents what the names meant, and parents told them about courage, hope, and the day when humanity became one. The veterans never bragged about what they had done. They didn't need to. Their actions had already written a story that would live for generations. Some of them joined new missions of peace, traveling to rebuild alien worlds that had also suffered from the war. Humanity extended a hand even to those who once attacked them. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about understanding. They had learned that true victory comes not from destroying enemies, but from ending the reason enemies exist. Decades passed, and the first human explorers reached beyond the old battlefields, into the deep unknown. They discovered strange new worlds filled with color and life. On one of those worlds, they built a small outpost, not a military base, but a garden. There they planted seeds from Earth, trees, flowers, grass, and placed a single stone in the center engraved with the words, "From Earth, with peace." The aliens who once feared humans began to approach again, this time with curiosity instead of hostility. They wanted to learn, to understand the species that had shown both strength and mercy. Slowly, communication opened between civilizations. Trade began. Knowledge was shared. The galaxy that had once been filled with fear now echoed with cooperation. Earth had become more than a planet. It had become a symbol, a place where life had faced destruction and chosen compassion. Its people had grown wiser, and though they still remembered the pain of war, they used that memory as fuel for peace. In the old space museum, one of the original warships was placed on display. It stood silent and massive, surrounded by gentle lights. Children walked through its halls, touching its cold walls with awe. Holograms told stories of bravery, sacrifice, and unity. At the very end of the exhibit, there was a message projected in soft blue letters. The universe is vast, But there is only one home for every heart, the home we build together. On quiet nights, the veterans often gathered at the observation towers, looking up at the same stars they once fought under. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Sometimes one would point to a star and whisper, "That's where it all began," and the others would nod in silence. Humanity had come far, but they never forgot. They remembered the peacekeeper who tried to stop the first conflict, the engineers who built the ships, the families who waited, the ones who didn't return. Every person had played a part in shaping this new era, and yet the story wasn't over. A new generation was ready to step forward, not as soldiers but as explorers. They looked to the stars with hope instead of fear. Their ships carried no weapons, only tools for discovery and hands for friendship. Before the first of these peaceful missions launched, the global leader stood before the crowd and said, "We go to the stars not to prove we are powerful, but to prove we are kind." The words echoed across Earth, carried in every broadcast, every language, every heart. As the new fleet rose into the sky, people watched once again just as they had years ago. But this time the light of the engines symbolized peace, not war. Children waved, old veterans smiled, and the whole planet stood united. From the highest peaks to the deepest valleys, Earth glowed with life and hope. Humanity had faced darkness and learned to shine brighter than ever. They had turned pain into purpose, war into wisdom, and fear into courage. And somewhere out in the endless night, among the stars that had once been battlegrounds, a soft light moved silently through space. It carried with it the message of an entire world, a message simple enough for any being to understand. We are humanity. We remember. We protect. We come in peace.